There are two kinds of silence in the suburbs. The first is the peaceful, birds chirping, 10 a.m. quiet when the world is at work and you're not. It's the silence of victory. The second is the 2 p.m. silence, the eerie, watchful quiet right before the school buses return, a silence that feels less like peace and more like a predator holding its breath. It's on a Tuesday, basking in that second kind of silence, that my story begins. My name is Jack. I own a company called Apex Canine Solutions, which is a fancy way of saying I train very smart dogs to find things for people with very deep pockets. Sometimes we find lost hikers. Sometimes we find contraband for private corporations. Most of the time, I get to work from home, which means I spend a lot of my day sitting on my back porch, drinking coffee that's too expensive, and watching my best friend, a bloodhound named Bartholomew, try to discreetly bury a squeaky hedgehog in my wife's azaleas. Barty, as he's known to his friends, is a floppy-eared, drool-producing genius, a furry Sherlock Holmes with the energy of a hungover college professor. He's my partner, and frankly, the brains of the operation. My porch overlooks what will soon be the crown jewel of Apex Canine, a state-of-the-art 2,000 square foot training facility right in my own backyard. Or at least it will be if my contractor can finish it without suffering a rage-induced aneurysm, courtesy of my neighbor and sworn nemesis, Brenda. Brenda is the president of the Whispering Willows Estates Homeowners Association. To say Brenda wields her minor authority like a weapon is an insult to weapons. Most weapons have a safety feature. Brenda is a walking, talking, clipboard-carrying rage machine wrapped in a pastel tracksuit. She lives 3 doors down in a house so beige it achieves a level of aggressive blandness I hadn't thought possible. Our history is long and storied. There was the Great Lawn Incident of 2023, where she measured my grass with a ruler and issued a formal citation because it was, and I quote from the letter, a full 1/4 inch beyond the mandated 3-inch seasonal maximum, thus projecting an aura of residential apathy. Then there was the mailbox standoff, a 3-week Cold War over my choice of mailbox paint, which she deemed too satin and not the HOA-approved eggshell. Most recently, she filed a noise complaint against Barty for excessively mournful howling, which, to be fair, he only does when the ice cream truck plays its siren song of broken dreams. So, when I see her signature silver sedan crawl past my house for the 3rd time in an hour, I know the day's peace is on borrowed time. She's casing the joint, Barty, I mutter into my mug. Barty lets out a low, mournful groan in agreement, his jowls quivering with gravitas. A loud thwack of a hammer from the backyard signals that Vince, my contractor, is still hard at work. Vince is a mountain of a man, with a beard that could hide a family of badgers and a laugh that sounds like rocks in a tumble dryer. He's a good man, an honest contractor, which means he's as rare as a unicorn. He stomps onto the porch, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of a grizzly bear-sized hand. "Morning, Jack," he grunts. "Just wanted to let you know we got the framing for the scent wall up, but, we have a situation." "Let me guess, Brenda?" He nods grimly. "She left another note on my truck." He pulls a folded piece of pastel pink paper from his pocket. "It's laminated this time. Says our generator is exceeding the ambient decibel limit for weekday constructional acoustics." She included a little chart. I take the note. She'd actually used a color-coded bar graph to illustrate acceptable noise levels. It was terrifyingly well made. This woman has too much time on her hands. She asked me if my permits were in harmony with the community's aesthetic covenant. I told her they were in harmony with the county clerk's office, and she looked at me like I'd just insulted her mother. She's watching us, man. Like a hawk with a bad perm and a label maker. "Just ignore her, Vince. You're fully permitted. She's got nothing." "Easy for you to say," he grumbles. but he cracks a smile. All right, well, I'm heading out to grab some more lumber. Try not to start any international incidents while I'm gone. I make no promises, I say, raising my mug in a toast. He leaves, and the silence returns. For a few glorious minutes, it's the good kind of silence again. The birds are chirping. Barty has successfully interred his hedgehog. All is right with the world. Then my phone rings. The caller ID says Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable is the absolute opposite of Brenda. She's a sweet 80-year-old widow who lives on the corner and bakes cookies for the whole block every Christmas. She is, by all accounts, the patron saint of Whispering Willows, and she sounds like she's in tears. Jack. Oh, Jack, I'm so sorry to bother you, dear. It's no bother at all, Mrs. Gable. What's wrong? I say, already standing up. It's gone, she sobs. It's just gone. The predator in the grass silence was over. War was here. 5 minutes later, I'm in Mrs. Gable's living room, which smells of lemon polish and old books. Barty is sitting patiently at my feet, having been bribed into his work vest with the promise of a premium-grade jerky stick. Mrs. Gable is sitting in a floral armchair, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Her golden retriever, a goofy, lovable oaf named Sonny, is resting his head in her lap, whining softly as if he understands something is terribly wrong. Okay, Mrs. Gable, I say in my calmest, most professional voice, the one I usually reserve for CEOs who've had a disgruntled employee hide a fish in their office ventilation system. Start from the beginning. What's gone? She takes a shaky breath and holds up her left hand to her earlobe, which is conspicuously empty. My earring, she whispers. The diamond one, from Harold. My stomach tightens. I knew the earrings. Everyone did. They weren't huge, but they were unique. An antique set with a filigree design you just don't see anymore. Harold, her late husband, had bought them for her on their 50th wedding anniversary, a year before he passed. They were less a piece of jewelry and more a part of her. I had it in this morning, I swear it, she continues, her voice trembling. I put them on like I do every day. I took Sonny for our usual walk, down Maple, across Willow Creek Lane, and then we stopped at the dog park for a few minutes to let him say hello to his friends. I came home, made a cup of tea, and when I went to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror and it was just gone. An antique diamond earring. In a dog park, my heart sank. That's not a needle in a haystack. It's a needle in a hay-themed amusement park. Did you retrace your steps? I ask. Oh, yes, 3 times. I walked the whole route, looking down like a crazy person. The people at the park even helped me look for a little while. But it's so small, Jack. And the grass. She dissolves into quiet sobs again. This is the point where you call the cops, mostly as a formality for the insurance claim. I did just that. 20 minutes later, 2 of our local finest are standing in Mrs. Gable's living room. Officer Miller, a man who has been a cop for so long, his face is permanently fixed in an expression of weary disappointment, and his partner, Officer Davis, a rookie so young he looks like he should be asking for permission to use the car. Miller listens patiently, his pen scratching on his notepad. Davis, meanwhile, keeps looking at Barty with a kind of nervous awe. Is he a police dog? He asks me in a whisper. Private contractor, I whisper back. He has his own 401k. After getting all the details, Miller closes his notepad with a sigh that seems to carry the weight of every lost item in county history. Ma'am, he says to Mrs. Gable, his voice gentle but firm. I'm very sorry, but there's not much we can do. There's no evidence of a crime. We'll file a lost property report, and if anyone turns it in, we'll call you immediately. But a dedicated search for a lost item, we just don't have the resources. Mrs. Gable's face falls. It's the answer she expected, But it still hurts. Bureaucracy, even when it's polite, is a cold comfort. Davis, ever the helpful rookie, adds, "You could try renting a metal detector?" Miller shoots him a look that could curdle milk. "Thank you, Officer Davis." He turns back to me. "Jack, good to see you. I trust you're not planning on taking matters into your own hands?" He says it as a question, but his eyes say, "I know you are. Just don't make me fill out any paperwork." "Just helping a neighbor, Tom," I say with a thin smile. They leave. The official channels are closed. Mrs. Gable looks utterly defeated. "Don't you worry," I tell her, kneeling down in front of her. "The police may not have the resources, but I do. His name is Bartholomew, and he has the best nose in the business." A flicker of hope returns to her eyes. "Really?" "Absolutely. All I need is something with the earring's scent on it. The other one would be perfect." She nods, rushes to her jewelry box, and returns with the sole remaining earring nestled in a velvet pouch. I let Barty get a good long sniff. His ears perk up. His tail gives a single, decisive thump against the carpet. He looks up at me, his big brown eyes saying, "Game on." "He's got the scent," I say, a surge of confidence flowing through me. "We'll start where you last knew you had it for sure, the dog park." "Oh, thank you, Jack, thank you," Mrs. Gable says, clasping my hand. "Don't thank me yet," I say, clipping Barty's lead to his harness. "Let's go find your earring." As we walk out the door, I have a feeling of pure, simple purpose. This isn't about money or a contract. It's about helping a sweet old lady who lost a piece of her heart. It's a noble mission, a righteous quest. It was a quest that, I would soon discover, led directly into the jaws of hell, a hell paved with manicured petunias and governed by the iron fist of HOA President Brenda. The Whispering Willows Community Dog Park is less of a park and more of a meticulously curated green square. The grass is an unnaturally vibrant shade of green. The fence is a pristine white vinyl, and the rules are posted on a sign the size of the Magna Carta. Rule #1. All canines must be pre-registered with the HOA. Rule #7. Enthusiastic barking is to be kept to a conversational level. Rule #12. No balls larger than a tennis ball or smaller than a golf ball. It was a place designed by people who didn't seem to like dogs or fun very much. When we arrive, Officers Miller and Davis are still there, their patrol car parked discreetly down the street. They'd clearly decided this was more interesting than a traffic stop. I give Miller a nod. He just sips his coffee and watches, the corner of his mouth twitching in what might have been a smile. And, as if summoned by the gods of petty conflict, Brenda is there. Of course she's there. She's on the outside of the fence, armed with a watering can, tending to a small, immaculate bed of petunias that borders the park. She moves with a stiff, purposeful gait, a general inspecting her troops. The moment she sees me and a harnessed Barty walking towards the gate, her back straightens like a steel rod. "Jack," she says. Her voice is deceptively sweet, the kind of sweetness that masks a poison dart frog. "Brenda," I reply, keeping my tone light. I decide to try the diplomatic approach first. It's a long shot, like trying to reason with a hurricane, but you have to try. "Beautiful day, isn't it? The petunias are looking particularly regulated." Her eyes narrow. She doesn't do small talk. "What is the meaning of this?" she asks, gesturing with her watering can towards Barty. "You know perfectly well that commercial animals are not permitted in the recreation areas." "He's not a commercial animal, Brenda. He's my dog, and this is a dog park." "He is wearing a work uniform," she sniffs, pointing at the Apex Canine Solutions patch on his vest. "That makes him a commercial entity. It's a clear violation of Bylaw 17, Section C, Paragraph 4. Unscheduled commercial activities are strictly prohibited in common areas. I swear, this woman sleeps with a copy of the HOA rulebook under her pillow. Brenda, listen, I say, my patience already starting to fray. I'm not here on business. I'm helping a neighbor. Mrs. Gable lost one of her diamond earrings here this morning. It was a gift from her late husband. We're just going to look for it. For a split second, a flicker of something human seems to cross her face. Then it's gone, replaced by the cold, hard mask of the bureaucrat. A lost item? She says. That's a personal matter. The HOA is not liable for lost personal effects. If she wants to look, she is welcome to do so during standard operating hours. You, however, are operating a canine retrieval service. A canine retrieval service? I'm a guy with a dog trying to help an old lady. Are you serious right now? Officer Miller, bless his tired heart, decides to intervene. He gets out of his car and ambles over, projecting an air of weary authority. Ma'am, he says to Brenda, we're not here in any official capacity, but this gentleman is just trying to help a resident. It would only take a few minutes. It seems like the neighborly thing to do. Brenda turns her withering gaze on him. Officer, she says, her voice dripping with condescension. While I appreciate the input of local law enforcement, this is a private community governed by its own set of covenants and restrictions. Unless you have a warrant to search this property, your jurisdiction ends at that curb. This is an HOA matter. Miller's jaw tightens. He's just been told to stay in his lane by a woman armed with a watering can. He glances at me and gives an almost imperceptible shake of his head. I tried, the look says. She's your problem now. Brenda, for the love of God, I plead, my voice rising. It's a diamond earring. For a grieving widow, can you please, for 1 second, turn off the HOA terminator mode and act like a human being? My role as president of this homeowners association, she declares, standing to her full 5'4" height, is to protect the integrity of our community and uphold the rules that all of us agreed to live by. Allowing you to conduct your business here would set a precedent. What's next? People running dog-walking businesses out of the park? Mobile groomers setting up shop? It's a slippery slope, Jack. A very slippery slope. I stare at her, dumbfounded. My brain is struggling to process the sheer, weaponized pettiness of it all. We're not talking about national security. We're talking about 5 minutes in an empty dog park. Barty, sensing my rising blood pressure, lets out a soft whine and nudges my hand with his wet nose. So that's it? Your final answer is no? I ask, my voice dangerously calm. My final answer, she says with a smug little smile, is that the rules are the rules. I knew then that diplomacy had failed. It was time to consider more creative options. But before I could even formulate a plan, Brenda decided to escalate things from a simple Cold War to a full-blown declaration of hostilities. While I was standing there, locked in a silent battle of wills with Brenda, my mind was racing. I was cycling through options. Could I talk someone else into letting me in? Could I wait until she left? I glanced over at Officer Davis, who was now leaning against the patrol car, trying his best to look official, while very obviously texting. This was going nowhere. Brenda, however, had a different plan. She wasn't content with just saying no. She needed to win. She needed to salt the earth and build a monument to her victory. With a theatrical, long-suffering sigh, she sets her watering can down with a delicate thud. You know, she announces to no one in particular, but loud enough for all of us to hear, all of this commotion has likely disturbed the turf. The soil pH is probably completely out of balance now. I just stare at her. The soil pH? Are you kidding me? I take my duties very seriously, Jack, she says, marching towards her sedan parked by the curb. And due to this unauthorized gathering and the potential for further disruption to community property, I have no choice but to take decisive action. She opens her trunk. I expect her to pull out a soil testing kit, or perhaps another, larger rule book. Instead, her hand emerges holding something that glints dully in the afternoon sun. It's a padlock, but it's not just any padlock. It's a monstrous, heavy-duty, industrial-grade piece of hardware. It looks like something you'd use to lock up a medieval dungeon or secure a shipping container full of plutonium. The key she holds is the size of my hand. My brain goes into slow motion. I watch as she marches, with the grim determination of a prison warden directly to the dog park gate. The gate is already secured by a simple latch, but that's not enough for Brenda. Oh no, she needs to make a statement. She expertly threads the thick steel shackle of the padlock through the chain on the gate. No, I think. She's not really going to. She is. The click of the lock, snapping shut, is deafening. It's a sound of absolute finality. It echoes in the quiet suburban air, a punctuation mark on the absurdity of the moment. She turns around, arms crossed, the very picture of smug satisfaction. For the protection of the turf and the prevention of further unsanctioned activities, she declares, her voice ringing with triumph, the dog park is now closed for emergency maintenance. It will reopen after a full and thorough review by the landscaping committee. The landscaping committee? I practically shout. You are the landscaping committee, and the architectural review committee, and the welcome wagon committee. I wear many hats, she says, a prim little smile playing on her lips. I expect the park will be ready to reopen next Tuesday. Perhaps. I am, for one of the few times in my life, utterly speechless. I've been checkmated. Not by a brilliant strategist, but by a woman whose entire worldview has been compressed into a 3-ring binder of bylaws. I look at Barty, who looks back at me with his big, sad eyes, as if to say, well, that's that. Can we get jerky now? I look at Officer Miller. He just slowly shakes his head, takes a long sip of his coffee, and gets back in his car. He's seen it all. The system has failed. Reason has fled the scene. Petty tyranny has won the day. My internal monologue is a screaming torrent of pure, unadulterated rage. I can feel the blood pounding in my ears. This isn't about the earring anymore. This is about the principle of the thing. This is about the unmitigated gall of one person to inflict their miserable, rule-obsessed existence on everyone else. This is about that smug look on her face. That look was her mistake. She thought she had won. She thought she had shut me down with her big, stupid lock and her imaginary committees. But Brenda didn't know who I was. She saw a guy with a dog. She didn't see the guy who runs a company that solves impossible problems for a living. She didn't see the guy who has a very particular set of skills and a Rolodex full of people with even more particular skills. She just poked the bear. Now she was about to find out the bear had a damn Air Force. A strange calm washed over me. The red-hot rage cooled and solidified into something else, pure, cold, crystalline resolve. Brenda mistook my silence for defeat. Her smug smile widened. She actually patted the padlock, as if it were a faithful pet. Well, she said, dusting her hands off, if that's all, I have some very important HOA business to attend to. Color swatches for the new community center welcome mat just arrived. She turned to walk away. Brenda, I said, my voice quiet but carrying. She stopped and looked back, an eyebrow raised. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf gives right before it does something deeply regrettable to a sheep. I turned my back to her, creating a small zone of privacy, and pulled out my phone. The cops and Brenda watched, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and confusion. I scrolled to my contacts and hit a speed dial simply labeled Mike, OPS. He picked up on the first ring. Apex Ops, Mike speaking. Mike, it's Jack, I said, keeping my voice low and professional. I've got a situation here. I need you to initiate a Code 3 response." There was a slight pause on the other end. "A Code 3? Jack, that's for hostile environments. Are you in danger?" "The only thing in danger is my sanity," I replied. "Let's call it a suburban blockade scenario. I'm dealing with a hostile local official who has secured a critical search area." "A hostile local official?" Mike asked, the confusion evident in his voice. "You heard me. Listen, I need the full compliance package. I want Echo Team, Delta Team, and Sierra Team. All handlers, all vehicles. Tell them Level 2 gear. Jack, Level 2 is for riot control." "Trust me, it's appropriate. Oh, and tell Dave to pack the fence panel toolkit. The non-destructive one. And you know what? Throw in the portable lighting rigs. It might get dark." "Lighting rigs? Jack, it's 2 in the afternoon. "Mike," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, "I'm looking at a padlock the size of a dinner plate and a woman who just weaponized the concept of soil pH. Do not question me, just send the teams." There was another pause, then a sigh. "Okay, Jack. Full compliance package is rolling. ETA is, whoa. They're already on the road for that training exercise. They can be there in less than 5 minutes. "Perfect," I said. "My authority? Let's just call it aggressive customer service." I hung up the phone. The world seemed to go quiet for a moment. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. Then I turned around. Brenda was still standing there, looking impatient. Officer Miller had one hand on his radio, looking concerned. Officer Davis just looked lost. I looked directly at Brenda, my smile gone, replaced by an expression of serene, unblinking focus. "You have 2 minutes," I said, my voice perfectly level. 2 minutes to take that lock off that gate." She scoffed. "Or what? You'll file a complaint? I'm trembling." "No," I said, checking my watch. "Or the cavalry arrives." 1 minute and 57 seconds later, it started. It began not as a sight, but as a sound. A low, distant hum that quickly grew into a distinct, multi-vehicle roar. It was the sound of professional-grade tires on quiet suburban asphalt. And it did not belong here. The few neighbors who had been curiously peeking through their blinds were now drawn out onto their porches. Brenda's smug expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "What is that noise?" "That," I said, a genuine, joyous smile now blooming on my face, "is the sound of your authority being rendered obsolete." Then they came into view. First 1, then 2, then 3 identical matte black Ford Transit vans. They weren't beat-up work vans. They were sleek, custom-fitted vehicles with tinted windows and the Apex Canine Solutions logo, a stylized German shepherd's head in profile, discreetly stenciled in dark gray on the side. They rounded the corner onto our quiet little street with the fluid precision of a presidential motorcade and screeched to a halt in a perfect, staggered formation, completely blocking the road in front of the dog park. For a second, there was silence. Then, the side doors of all 3 vans slid open in perfect, synchronized unison. What came out was a vision of glorious, beautiful overkill. 6 handlers, 3 men, and 3 women emerged from the vans. They were all dressed in identical black tactical-style pants, steel-toed boots, and gray polo shirts bearing the Apex logo. They wore utility belts equipped with leashes, pouches, and radios that crackled with quiet static. They moved with a calm, efficient purpose that was utterly alien to this land of lawn sprinklers and book clubs. One of them, a stern-looking woman with her hair in a tight bun, was holding a tablet and immediately started directing the others with quiet hand signals. And then came the dogs. Each handler was accompanied by a canine partner that looked like it had been genetically engineered in a lab for pure, unadulterated competence. There was a statuesque German shepherd, alert and focused. A lean, wiry Belgian Malinois whose intelligent eyes missed nothing. A cheerful-looking but all-business Labrador retriever. A compact, determined beagle whose nose was already twitching, sampling the air. And two others, a Dutch shepherd and another bloodhound, Barty's cousin in the tracking arts. They sat perfectly by their handlers' sides, calm, disciplined, and radiating an aura of, "We are here to get stuff done." The effect on the assembled audience was immediate and profound. Brenda's jaw had dropped. Her face, which moments before had been a mask of smug victory, was now a canvas of slack-jawed disbelief. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but no sound came out. She looked from the vans to the handlers to the dogs and back to me, her brain clearly refusing to process the scene unfolding on her quiet suburban street. Officer Davis, the rookie, had his phone out and was shamelessly filming, muttering, "No way, no freaking way," under his breath. Officer Miller, however, was a study in pure, unadulterated joy. He was leaning against the hood of his patrol car, his arms crossed. The weary disappointment was gone, replaced by the giddy expression of a man who thought he had seen everything the world had to offer and had just been proven gloriously wrong. He was actively chuckling. He caught my eye and gave me a slow, appreciative nod. The neighbors were now a full-blown crowd. Mr. Henderson from down the street, who was usually seen only when mowing his lawn, was standing on his driveway in his socks. The Johnson twins were peering over their fence. It was the most exciting thing to happen in Whispering Willows since the great Raccoon Dash versus Dot Dash Garbage Dash Can War of '22. And then, the cherry on top of this beautiful Sunday of suburban chaos. Vince the contractor pulled up in his dusty Ford F-150, intending to drop off some paperwork. He slammed on his brakes, his eyes going wide as he took in the scene. He looked at the vans, at the tactical teams, at Brenda's horrified face, and then at me. A slow grin spread across his face, a grin of such pure, unholy glee that it could have powered a small city. Without a word, he put his truck in park, killed the engine, reached into his passenger seat, and pulled out a battered folding lawn chair and a can of Dr. Pepper. He set the chair up right on the sidewalk, cracked open his soda, and settled in with the contented air of a man who just got front-row seats to the Super Bowl. My lead handler, a formidable woman named Maria, strode over to me, her tablet in hand. "Jack," she said, her voice all business. "Perimeter secured. What's the mission objective?" I pointed a single, steady finger at the locked dog park gate. "Objective is a small, high-value metallic item lost inside that containment area," I said, loud enough for Brenda to hear. "The area is blocked by a civilian-enforced, non-standard security protocol." Maria glanced at the padlock, then at a sputtering Brenda, then back at me. Not a flicker of surprise crossed her face. "Understood," she said. "Hostile active or passive obstruction?" I grinned. "Oh, I'd say she's pretty hostile." Brenda finally found her voice. It came out as a strangled squawk. "What is this? You can't do this! This is private property. I'm calling the police!" Officer Miller, from his perch on the patrol car, called out cheerfully, "We're already here, Brenda. Just enjoying the show." "This is an invasion!" she shrieked, fumbling for her phone. "You are all trespassing. I will have every single one of you fined." "Nobody has trespassed, Brenda," I said calmly. "We are currently on a public street, and we're not going to damage a single piece of your precious HOA property." Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. "You'll never get through that lock. It's case-hardened steel." "You're right," I said. "We're not going to touch your lock." I turned to Maria. "Phase 2. We need to breach the fence." Then I looked over at the best seat in the house, where Vince was taking a long, satisfying sip of his soda. Vince, my man, I need a consultation. Vince's eyes lit up. You're kidding me, he said, getting out of his chair. You want my professional opinion? You're a licensed and bonded contractor, I said. I need your expert advice on the structural integrity of this fence, specifically how to perform a temporary, non-destructive disassembly. Vince was practically vibrating with joy. This was the best day of his life. He strode over to the fence, running a hand over the white vinyl. Well, Jack, he began, his voice taking on the serious tone of a master craftsman. This is a standard post and rail vinyl system. Your weakest point isn't the lock, it's the fasteners. The panels are slid into grooves on the posts, but they're held in place with stainless steel screws, right here at the base. He pointed to a small, almost invisible screw cap near the bottom of one of the posts next to the gate. If a person, he continued, a twinkle in his eye, were to, say, pop this cap off and use a number 2 square head driver on a cordless impact drill, they could have these 2 screws out in about 10 seconds. Then the whole panel would just slide right out. No damage to the panel, no damage to the post. It would slide right back in just as easy. I looked at Maria. Did you hear that? Number 2 square head? One of my handlers, a young guy named Dave, who was our designated tools guy, was already jogging back to his van. He returned a moment later with a high-powered cordless drill. He gave Vince a respectful nod, as one professional to another. Allow me, son, Vince said, taking the drill. He clearly wasn't going to miss out on this. Under the horrified gaze of Brenda, Vince knelt down, popped the screw cap off with his thumbnail, and expertly backed out the 2 screws. The sound of the drill was a sweet, sweet symphony of progress. With the screws removed, he and Dave each grabbed one side of the large vinyl fence panel. They slid it sideways, out of the grooves in the posts, as easily as taking a book off a shelf. They then carefully leaned the pristine, undamaged panel against the next section of the fence. Where there was once an impassable barrier, there was now a perfect 5-foot-wide opening. I walked through the gap and into the dog park, Barty trotting happily at my side. I turned back to the crowd. For the record, I announced loudly, making sure everyone, especially Brenda, could hear. No property has been damaged. No locks have been cut. We have simply executed a temporary, non-destructive disassembly of a modular barrier for the purpose of emergency access. I'm quite certain the bylaws allow for that. You do have a bylaw for emergency access, don't you, Brenda? Brenda's face was a glorious picture of impotent fury. Her primary defense, the mighty padlock, had been flanked. Her main legal threat, destruction of property, had been neutralized. She had been outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outspectacled. All she could do was stand there, on the wrong side of the fence, and watch. I turned to my team. All right, people, I said, my voice crisp and clear. Let's go find an earring. What followed was the most overqualified, absurdly professional search for a piece of jewelry in human history. If you squinted, you might have thought you were watching a forensics team at a crime scene. Maria, my operations lead, took charge. All right, let's establish a search grid, she commanded, looking at her tablet, which now displayed a satellite image of the dog park. Delta team, you take the northern quadrant. Grid search, 5-foot intervals, eyes on the ground. Sierra, you've got the southern quadrant. Echo, perimeter sweep. Check the fence line, benches, and the water station. The teams fanned out with practiced efficiency. The German Shepherd and the Malinois began a slow, methodical sweep of the open, grassy areas, their heads down, moving back and forth in perfect lines. The Labrador, whose specialty was item recovery, was diligently sniffing around the base of the lone oak tree in the center of the park. It was a beautiful thing to watch. Years of training and instinct playing out in perfect harmony. My job was to run the star player, Barty. I took out the velvet pouch containing Mrs. Gable's other earring and let him take another long, deep sniff. Okay, buddy, I murmured. Find it. Go find the shiny." Barty let out a low woof of understanding and set off, his nose plastered to the ground. A bloodhound doesn't search, he follows. He was processing 1,000,000 different scents, filtering out the grass, the dirt, the lingering smells of a dozen other dogs, and focusing on that one unique trail of Mrs. Gable and her lost diamond. The whole scene was utterly surreal. On one side of the fence, you had my teams conducting a search with the seriousness of a bomb squad. On the other side, you had a small suburban mob, a gleeful contractor providing color commentary, 2 cops trying not to laugh, and one HOA president slowly reaching critical mass. "This is an outrageous abuse of dog power!" Brenda shrieked, gripping the fence. "I am documenting all of this. You will all be hearing from my lawyer." Vince, from his lawn chair, yelled back, "Get pictures of the beagle, Brenda. He's got a real professional attitude. I like his hustle." The beagle, whose name was Chester, was indeed hustling. He had his nose deep in a bush near the entrance, his tail wagging furiously. For a moment I thought he had it, but he just emerged with a half-chewed tennis ball and looked very proud of himself. I kept my focus on Barty. He wasn't interested in the open field where the earring was most likely to have been dropped. He ignored the benches. He completely bypassed the area where Sonny, Mrs. Gable's retriever, had been playing. He was methodical, following a scent trail that made no logical sense to me. He ambled along the edge of the park, his great floppy ears dusting the ground. My radio crackled. "Grid 1 clear," came a voice. "Perimeter clear," came another. The teams were efficient, but they were turning up nothing. A knot of anxiety began to form in my stomach. What if it wasn't here? What if I had unleashed this entire circus for nothing? The public humiliation would be bad enough, but having to go back and tell Mrs. Gable we'd failed would be 10 times worse. Brenda could clearly sense it. Her shrieking had subsided, replaced by a low, triumphant muttering. "Nothing," I heard her say to herself. "They're not going to find anything. All this fuss for nothing. Just wait until the board hears about this." I ignored her and focused on my dog. "Come on, Barty," I whispered. "Don't let me down, buddy. Where is it?" Barty stopped. He lifted his head, sniffed the air, and then let out a deep, resonant bay. It was his "I've got something" voice. It wasn't the frantic bark of a discovery, but the confident announcement of a trail found. He turned and started trotting with a new sense of purpose, not towards the center of the park, but directly towards the fence line, directly towards the manicured, immaculate, prize-winning petunia bed, directly towards Brenda. He followed the scent trail right up to the white vinyl fence, to the exact spot where Brenda had been standing when we first arrived. The team stopped their searching and turned to watch. The neighbors fell silent. Vince leaned forward in his chair. Barty stopped, his nose pressed against the bottom of the fence. He whined, then pawed at the ground, looking up at me with an expression of intense concentration. The scent trail ended here, but the earring wasn't on this side. My eyes followed his gaze through the fence slats into the heart of Brenda's petunia bed. And that's when I saw it. A flash of movement under a large leafy plant. And hiding there, as if guarding a treasure, was Brenda's tiny, white, fluffy Pomeranian, Sir Reginald Fluffington. And he was chewing on something small and metallic and shiny. The world seemed to grind to a halt. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant traffic, Vince crunching on a chip, faded into nothing. All that existed was that little white dog, the prize-winning petunias, and the unmistakable glint of a diamond earring clutched in his tiny mouth. Barty let out another low, mournful bay, as if to say, "See? I told you so. Now where's my jerky?" I knelt down slowly, my eyes locked on the Pomeranian. "Well, I'll be," I whispered to myself. The silence was broken by Vince. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," he roared, slapping his knee. The entire neighborhood seemed to exhale at once, a collective gasp of realization. I stood up and pointed through the fence. My voice was calm, but it carried across the park like a judge's gavel. "Brenda," I said, "it appears we've located the missing item." Brenda followed my finger, her eyes squinting. She saw Sir Reginald. She saw the earring. Her brain performed a series of mental gymnastics so fast they probably broke the sound barrier. She went from denial to confusion to horror to rage and landed on pure, unadulterated panic. "Reggie!" she shrieked. "Sir Reginald Fluffington, you drop that this instant, naughty boy, bad dog!" Sir Reginald, hearing the panic in his owner's voice, did what any small, coddled dog would do. He thought it was a game. He snatched the earring up more firmly and started darting around the petunia bed, his little tail held high like a fluffy white flag of defiance. It was the single greatest moment of my adult life. Maria, my handler, ever the professional, spoke into her radio. "All teams, stand down," she said, her voice betraying the slightest tremor of suppressed laughter. "The asset has been located." I walked back to the opening in the fence as Brenda scrambled to get into her precious flower bed, making a mess of the carefully arranged mulch. "Naughty, Reggie, naughty!" she kept crying, lunging for the dog, who easily dodged her. I leaned against the post. "You know, Brenda," I said conversationally, "it looks like the earring was never actually lost in the dog park. My guess is that when Mrs. Gable bent down to say hello to Sir Reginald this morning, your little kleptomaniac snatched it right off her ear." The implications of this hung in the air, thick and delicious. The entire standoff, the bylaws, the lecture on turf maintenance, the padlock, all of it was because of her owned dog. She had locked down the park to prevent us from finding evidence that incriminated her own fluffy accomplice. One of my handlers, a woman with a talent for handling small, difficult animals, stepped through the fence opening. "Ma'am, let me help," she said calmly. She approached Brenda and the yapping Pomeranian, knelt down, and spoke in a soft, soothing voice. Within seconds, Sir Reginald had trotted over to her, and with a gentle maneuver and the offer of a treat she produced from a pouch, the earring was liberated from his mouth. She stood up and presented the slobber-covered but otherwise perfect diamond earring to me. I took it, walked back through the fence, and held it up for all to see. The crowd of neighbors burst into spontaneous applause. Officer Davis was grinning from ear to ear. Officer Miller was wiping a tear of pure laughter from his eye. Brenda stood frozen in the middle of her now trampled petunia bed, her face a color I had previously only seen in a sunset. She was beaten, humiliated, utterly and completely defeated by a bloodhound, a contractor, and her own thieving fluffball of a dog. Victory had never tasted so sweet. The aftermath was a blur of beautiful, satisfying moments. Dave and Vince expertly slid the fence panel back into place and secured the screws, leaving no trace of our entry, except for the lingering ghost of Brenda's dignity. The teams packed up their gear and dogs with the same quiet efficiency they'd displayed upon arrival. Before leaving, Maria handed me a laminated invoice. The line item read, 1-1 Suburban Nuisance Abatement and Asset Recovery. The price was listed as $0. Underneath, in the notes section, she had written, "Pro bono. This one was a pleasure." I walked the earring, freshly wiped clean, down the street to Mrs. Gable's house. When I placed it in her palm, her face lit up with a joy so pure it could have powered the city grid. She hugged me. Then she hugged Barty, who accepted the affection with the noble stoicism of a true hero. She tried to offer me money, but I refused. Seeing the look on her face was payment enough. Back at the scene of the crime, Officer Miller was finishing up his report. He beckoned me over to his car. "Just so you know," he said, turning his laptop screen towards me, "this is my official summary of events." I leaned in and read the single, glorious sentence he had typed. Assisted resident in locating lost property. Property was recovered from a dog. Situation de-escalated. "It's a masterpiece of understatement, Tom," I said, grinning. "I aim to please," he replied, a wide smile finally breaking across his face. "You know, in 25 years on the force, I've seen a lot of weird things, but a full-scale K-9 unit deployment to settle an HOA dispute, that's a new one. Don't ever change, Jack." He tipped his cap and drove away. A new story to tell back at the station. The real finishing move, however, came the next day. My victory wasn't just about showing Brenda up. It was about dismantling her power structure. That afternoon, Vince came over. He wasn't there to work. He was there to plot. He had a copy of the county fire and safety codes with him. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a specific ordinance. "All community access gates, especially for recreational areas, must be accessible by emergency services. That means they either need to have a key in a universal lockbox or use a code that's on file with the fire department. Putting your own private, non-compliant padlock on there is a major violation, a huge one." We spent the next hour drafting the most beautiful, eloquent, and legally devastating formal complaint the Whispering Willows HOA had ever seen. We cited county codes, HOA bylaws regarding emergency access, and attached a dozen signed witness statements from the neighbors who had watched the whole thing go down. We sent it via certified mail that evening. And now, a week later, I'm back on my porch. The 2 p.m. silence feels different today. It's the good kind, the peaceful kind. In my hand, I'm holding a letter from the HOA. It informs me, in stilted, formal language, that following an emergency board meeting, Brenda has been officially censured for creating a safety hazard. She has been removed as head of the Architectural Review Committee and the Landscaping Committee. Best of all, the board has asked if Apex Canine Solutions would be willing to consult on a new Emergency Canine Access Protocol for the community. Vince is sitting in the chair opposite me, a cold beer in his hand. He raises his bottle. "To aggressive customer service," he says with a deep laugh. "I'll drink to that," I say, clinking his bottle. In the yard, the construction on my training facility is proceeding ahead of schedule. And at my feet, Bartholomew, the hero of the hour, is happily gnawing on a brand new chew toy I bought him yesterday. It's shaped like a padlock.